Welcome to Music City Memoirs. I'm your host, Dave Bechtel. Thanks for joining me as we explore the lives of the great people of Nashville that helped give this amazing city the nickname Music City, USA. Today I am joined by Brett Manning. Brett has had a long career as a vocal coach and has worked with many well-known artists that I'm sure many of you have heard of. Some folks such as Taylor Swift, Luke Bryan, Miley Cyrus, Keith Urban, and many, many more. Brett established Singing Success, which is the #1 selling vocal program in the world. Thanks for being here today, Brett.
Thank you for having me.
So, like most of the folks that we have come on at Music City Memoirs, I know that you are not originally from Nashville. I think the vast majority of us are transplants.
Right.
Can you tell us where you're from originally?
Oh gosh, well, born in Oregon, then went to California as a youth, and then grew 4 years old, moved to Utah. Grew up in Utah, and then after I graduated, moved back to California because I couldn't wait to leave for a little bit. Then went back to Utah again, then went back to California a second time, came back to Utah, and then when I was 31, hold on, am I 32? I moved here 20 years ago as of January 3rd, which is my son's 12th birthday. June 3rd, I moved here, and I remember coming down through Kentucky and driving down that the 65.
65, yeah.
65, coming down the 65, seeing everything, just the mist clearing.
Yes.
And it had been raining the whole trip, and then that mist is coming, and I saw Nashville for the first time, and I saw the Batman building, and I had moved out to Cookeville for a little while because property is really dirt cheap. Didn't realize how far that drive actually was. On a map, it seems this far, but when you drive, it's this far. And I was out there for about 2 weeks, and so I moved into Nashville immediately, and have fallen in love with this town. I mean, it was a love at first drive, first sight, and I've experienced more heartache, more blessing, more ups and downs and highs and lows and valleys and mountaintops here than anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And the valley makes the mountaintop that much better. So this is a city, as you know, a city of struggle and a city of brokenness, a city of praise, a city of joy, a city of creativity. It literally everything is here. A city of loyalty, a city of deception, a city of subterfuge. But then when you get into the deepest relationships you could possibly forge here, it makes all that much more worth it. After living, being able to juxtapose Nashville with LA, there is such a strong differentiation in my mind. And I'm not ripping on LA people as a whole, but I will say that 95% of the people I built relationships with there, it wasn't real.
Right.
And the other 99% didn't want relationships. So coming here, it was a very different atmosphere of let's have a community, let's have family, let's work together and know each other. And there it was like, man, what have you done for me? What can you do for me? And so this is the place that out of every place, out of New York and LA and all the other cities I've been to in Chicago, the place that I knew I could have a long-lasting, a lifetime here. I could build a life here, even to the point of my parents lived back near Salt Lake City, Utah, and you got the beautiful mountains, and I love to fish, and I love the mountain life, but I'm not going back there.
Yeah.
This actually became my home, and it's an awful weird feeling to come to a place and suddenly I've arrived here, and this is my home now, and that fundamental shift that happens inside of you, where you know that you actually are following a calling. Not just a dream, but a destiny, and say, I'm fulfilling my destiny here. I have to stay here. It's not just that I want to, but I also have to. Now, I'll take a beach house in Florida, but this is where I want to be buried.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about family. You said you have your folks still live back in Salt Lake, and you mentioned your son, who's 12 years old?
Yeah, 12, and I got a daughter who's 11, and I've got 2 older boys. I did 2 tours of duty with the marriage thing,
Yeah.
and one was back in 2000 is when we split up, and she moved back to California, to Phoenix, and then to California. And I have 2 older boys there, one that's 20 and one that's 22.
Cool.
Super creative music types.
Oh,
you know?
really?
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to make them do that.
Yeah.
You know, as a matter of fact, they're like, that's your thing, Dad.
Yeah.
And I make them vocalize in the car and run doing these stupid scales on the way to school, and they had all this great pitch, the great range from a young age, and then as they got older, like, that's your thing.
Yeah.
And then without, almost like the force of gravity, just sucked them right back into it. And then my 2 children here, they have, again, also have told me, I want to do music. This is all I want to do. And I've never said, you should do music.
Right.
I want you to do music. But to me, it's been modeling that.
Yeah.
And it's the same way my mom modeled it for me. She sang in Vegas.
Oh, wow.
She shared the stage with Engelbert Humperdinck, with the Rat Pack, all of those guys.
Holy cow.
Tom Jones, knows all of them very, very well, and sings very, very well. And even though she survived a life-threatening stroke that should have killed her a year ago, she's 79 now, and Dad's 87. It just kind of floors me to say it, you know, like, when did you guys get old, you know? But she can still sing, still slurs her speech a little bit. Sometimes she's incredibly lucid and speaks as if it never happened. And other times I hear her kind of not being able to get a sentence out. But when I visited her in June, she was singing up to G's and A's above a woman's high C, up into the whistle range.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, she can sing Phantom of the Opera, the high note, and sing it effortless.
Cow.
Yeah. At 79, I had my first exposure to singing in an Elvis Presley competition, or not
really?
A talent competition.
Okay, yeah.
And I sang Elvis Presley. I was 10 years old.
What song did you do?
I did All Shook Up, You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, Love Me Tender. Wow. I did a bunch of songs. You know, 'cause I had
the greatest hits of the early years.
Yeah, that's right. And I had the greatest hits album, the one with that kind of amber color in the background, and he's that pretty boy face, and everybody wanted to be him. Yeah. You know, and I put up my collar and rolled up my pants and wore these boots and these jeans and a white T-shirt and had a leather jacket, and I was saying, "You ain't nothing but a," and the girl's screaming, and I thought, there's something to this. I like this. And I was hooked, but then I got too cool for school, and I'm like, hey, I don't sing, you know. I don't do that. And I did sports and fought a lot, you know, got in fights and was a vandal and a little punk kid, you know, just trying to run around with the wrong crowd.
This is in Utah?
Yeah, that was in Utah.
Like Mormonville?
Yeah, we were just, we were the most rebellious out there, you know, and though I'm not Mormon, that's kind of how I was raised and raised around these kids, and we were the most rebellious, wild kids. We were just literally like, if you told us not to, we would. You know, and it was very interesting because sometimes people are guided not by an internal ethical code. Instead, if it's external, then you fight against that. If it becomes internal, you're like, well, this is who I am. I don't do that because I don't. That's not who I am. But at the time, I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to do this. I want to. Yeah. So we were.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. If I ever release an autobiography, people will think I'm lying because the things we did were crazy.
But it sounds like maybe you didn't ever get caught.
I got caught once.
Okay, one time.
Yeah, one time, taken to the police station. A bunch of my friends were shoplifting, and I was with them, and they caught us outside of the store. A friend of mine pulls out a Cool of the Gang tape, and a security guard grabs us right before we get on the bus. I mean, I was glad because if I would have gone further into that, I mean, my whole life could have been affected. Yeah. Instead, I went as a photographer as my first creative trait, and then I went from a photographer to dance. I was a break dancer my senior year of high school.
You had the zippers and
the zipper stuff. Oh yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I did the windmill and the helicopter, which I can still do today at 52. I can still windmill. It hurts more.
We might get a little video of that later. We'll see.
We could probably do that. It hurts really bad, but I can still do it.
That won't play well on the audio podcast, but for the video.
For the video.
Gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I went from there to 3 years of still kind of crazy rebellion from 18 to 21. 21, had a deep spiritual experience, changed my life, and I knew that I was being called to a better, deeper, richer life and a life of purpose. And at that moment, it was literally, it was the change of a blink, and then suddenly I was one person, and then I became another person, and it was that fast. And at that point, I walked into a church shortly after that, and I was singing and just bellowing out like I'd done when I was younger. And I had started taking interest in singing a little bit at that time. I did some musical theater, was in, oh my gosh, what is it? West Side Story.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I was one of the fighters and dancers. I transferred from breakdancing.
Or were you?
I was a jet shark. Jet sharks are Puerto Ricans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a Puerto Rican. Yeah, I was a Puerto Rican, and I got to get beat up. I didn't think it was fair. Come on, man, I can kick. Let me throw down, you know. But anyway, I did that. It was a blast, and then started college right around the same time as my rebirth at 21, and it was a ballet and jazz major.
And where'd you go to school at?
University of Utah.
Oh, the Utes.
Yeah, the Utes. And
did you enjoy your time when Urban Meyer was there at all?
I was here already, but I loved it when
he was there?
I was here and I'd watch him, and then he left. Like, why? You never lose. I mean, we won 2 bowl games with him, and I was like, it broke my heart. I mean, but I was a funny thing. The whole time I went to University of Utah, I was there 3.5 years and never finished my degree. I never went to one sporting event, not one football game, not one. I was just such the artsy hippie type, not really hippie, just long-haired guy.
Yeah.
But I had my hair when they first buzz cut under the middle, underneath, and then that came back again, of course, because all styles do this. I was shocked when people start undercut. Used to call it the undercut, but I had the undercut hair and big long ponytail, and I was in ballet and standing here like this and whipping my hair around, doing 7 pirouettes. And
I think ponytail, that's a really polite way of saying mullet.
Yeah,
with that kind of haircut, don't you think?
No, because the side was really long, but I think there may be some pic somewhere hiding out of me of a modified Lost Boys mullet. You know, remember Lost Boys?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
I might have fallen victim to that awful decision and hairstyles way back when.
I mean, we might in 10 years from now look at ourselves, what we're doing, like, what were we thinking? I mean,
I'm quite certain of that.
Yeah. So watch out. Don't be careful who you mock, because one day you're going to be mocking yourself.
That's correct. That is correct. Yeah. So you have a studio down on Music Row, because you talked about driving into Nashville and seeing the Batman building. The skyline obviously looks very different now than what it did when you first came to town. But you rent a place down on the Row. How has that changed?
Well, man, it's changed so much. Music Row, unfortunately, is turning into Condo Row, and that's grievous. I mean, look, if I'm a building owner and some developer comes to me and said, hey, you bought your place for $500,000, it's worth about $1.5 million now, and you're renting out, making money, but I'll give you $2 million for your lot. You might go, I could use some vacation time.
Yeah.
That's a heavy temptation. So a lot of the owners, I understand. I mean, what I want to do is, if I'm saying it's turning into condo, I don't want to judge the owners, because, I mean, people got families to feed. People got college funds. Yeah, dreams to pursue college funds. What I kind of wish is that some of the people who have means, and they did this with the RCA studio. We had that big. I'm not sure if you were at that big.
Oh yeah.
I was there too. Yeah.
Cool.
Ben Folds and all those people back then. And for those who don't know, the RCA studio, where they were going to close it and tear it down to builders, that historic building. And we all gathered together and had that little event there where we were like, don't do this. And some guys stepped up and threw down some cash and said, no, not today. You're not going to tear this down. It would be nice if more of that happened. I mean, I know there are people here of tremendous means. And if you're one of those people living out in Leaper's Fork and you happen to own 2,000 or 3,000 acres, it would be really nice for you to buy some of these buildings. You may not profit hugely off them, but you're preserving a generation of great singers and of great musicians, and a place for them to go and create instead of dispersing us throughout the city. And you know what? maybe that is the answer. Maybe a condo row, maybe row has to be Music City in a more broad sense, and maybe it is spreading it.
It is, but then I guess part of my fear is in talking with my friends in Los Angeles that are in the music business, one of the things that they talk about that they struggle with is that they can only do maybe one session a day, because getting from one side of Los Angeles to the other is really difficult with the amount of people and the traffic and that sort of thing. So with it being spread out as much as Los Angeles is, that's been a challenge. And I think we have been seeing some of that on a small scale here in town, where the sessions, studio sessions used to be 10, 2, and 6.
Right.
And that's starting to spread out a little bit, because people are saying, well, in order to get from Franklin up to Nashville, or to get from Brentwood up to Nashville, I got to have more than an hour.
That's right.
Because of the traffic and that sort of thing. And so I do hear what you're saying about, spreading out and giving more people more opportunities. But at the same time, I think one of the things that's made the studio world work in Nashville, and why there's so many live musicians that play on records here as opposed to other cities, is because people can move from studio to studio relatively easy, because they've been in close proximity.
Yeah.
And so that might be getting lost a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that, because I've been part of a lot of those sessions. I never really called myself a producer, but I end up co-producing a lot of stuff. I get how music works. So sometimes I end up being the producer, and you and I know that one of the best kept secrets of Nashville, I'm not sure, you may end up cutting this, and so you just hear this much, and then suddenly, what is it? And then we talk about
I think I know where you're going with it, and I'm going to agree with you 100% before you even say it, but go ahead.
Get great musicians.
There you go. That's the 2 keys to making a great record. Number 1, good songs, and number 2, great players.
Great players.
There you go. You're all done. Just make sure that they get fed at lunch and dinner, and then you're golden.
Let them go. Yeah,
yep, absolutely.
I'm good friends with Ed Cash, and he was just talking about, he said, man, I built fantastic relationships with all the great players, and we have these conversations, and he plays every instrument very, very well, and he said, I don't really like play on my records. I mean, I will, but I don't love it. I love to get that community feel and the band feel, and everybody doing what they do well together. It's which is another thing that I do still love about Nashville. And I love the boutique. You got one guy playing everything, and you're working with an artist. That's cool too. I love that, and I got friends who do that and do it very well. But I equally love, I don't think it's an either or, I think they have equal ultimacy, and it's just for different situations. But there is something really magical being in the studio. And I mean, that's something that I think that Nashville still, leads the world with. It's just that beautiful session, the players who know each other. Not saying that doesn't happen in other cities, but here you've experienced it. Yeah. It's extremely special.
Not on the same level and frequency as other places. It's having a full tracking session in other cities is somewhat of an unusual event, or a rare common thing, whereas that's just kind of standard operating procedure here. So Brett, we've talked a lot about Nashville, the growth, the players, that sort of thing. Love to chat with you a little bit about your career and what it is exactly that you do as a vocal coach. What does a vocal coach do?
Well, it's interesting, because there are so many different kinds of vocal coaches. Typically what people hear is, breathe from your diaphragm, which is good. You breathe in, your stomach goes out. Breathe out, your stomach eventually collapses. Your stomach should stay full. Now, that took me less than 10 seconds to tell you. But I know people who will spend 3 months on just getting you to breathe right.
Correct.
And I'm like, it ain't that tightly packed, I promise you. Babies scream like rock stars. All babies are rock stars.
Yeah.
And they never lose their voice.
Yeah.
And most rock stars are babies too. Sorry. So I say that because I sing rock.
That might be the quote of the interview right there. So.
And I sing rock, so I'm one of those babies sometimes. But they can scream all day long, and they don't lose their voice. Now, singing isn't necessarily screaming, but Pavarotti said singing is like crying on pitch. You don't yell, you cry, and you hear that pungent, penetrating voice that it just bites, It's not about being necessarily the prettiest voice. Pretty is good, but nobody looks and goes and says, in a pop singer or pop rock or country, go, real pretty voice. Really, they say real cool voice, real interesting voice, real distinctive voice.
Right.
If you think of that guy, a guy he talks, no, your father, met him 2 or 3 times, doesn't matter. Point is, Christopher Walken, he's interesting.
Yeah.
And interesting is more compelling than the guy who speaks like this. And he's very crisp and clear and concise. That singing should be personality externalized.
Right.
And you think about politics aside, forget left and right for a minute. If you think of the two television presidents that could not win because they look like television president would be Mitt Romney and Al Gore. Square jaw, hair, jaw, speak clear, speak concise, not enough personality. You can't win. Right. Either one. You can't win. Well, the guy, no, come on, that guy.
Yeah.
And these Texans, I'm a Texan, I'm American. These tourists, there's a word for it. They're bad. And we're gonna build a wall. And Jimmy Carter talking in his cheeks, and Reagan. Well, all these personalities. It's how many textures, how many colors can you make with your voice as a singer? That guy. Ladies, I love you. I mean, you think about that voice shows up in singing, that little vocal fry. I mean, that's how Shania Twain started all her phrases. She started out with that Lady in You, that little bit of vocal fry on The Woman in Me, and it draws you in. And then the breathy sound, that's Reagan, isn't the breathy? Nasal sound, like Bush Sr., kind of slightly raspy sound. Bush Sr., Obama in his cheeks, like a blues singer would be like, I got a hard time coming. Well, that cheeky sound that he kind of talks into.
Yeah.
And everyone, even kind of the high lyrics, thin sound of Trump, that every single one of them have personality. I mean, politics completely aside for this, I have no problem talking about that, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about personality, and personality wins everything. The singer who's the most interesting is the singer who has the best career. Now, I would say it's better to be interesting than good, but if you ain't good, nobody wants to listen to you. So you have to be good, and being good implies what the methodology that I've been trained in is sustained speech. Singing is sustained speech. So if I'm talking, I shouldn't start singing and making this tone, and you hear some opera singers say, Papagano's come to me, and he goes, Bist du haben Schleiser. What
just
are you
happened?
doing? What just happened? You just became somebody else. You're schizophrenic, and so, if you hear Sean Connery talk, you'd think he might do a little bit of music theater, right, with that voice, because there's a certain quality there, if you said, you're singing Les Miserables, my God on high, hear my prayer, and they had that personality that I want to hear you sing, man. But what you have to understand is if you can remove the clutter that is typically technique, people say he has great vocal technique, and that's either the best compliment or the biggest insult you can give a singer. And you know that as a producer, because somebody comes in, oh, he's a great technical singer. Well, the first thing you think is, oh,
because there's no heart. You're not delivering a message.
Right, and I don't think anybody's going to accuse me as a singer of I don't believe him. What I want to do is be believable.
Sure.
And that's like when I worked with Taylor Swift, it was like, you're believable. Let's make you even more believable. Let's make you better. Let's connect you. Let's give you more range than you need. And most people don't know this. She can sing as high as Mariah Carey.
Wow.
Easily. Anytime she wants. That is not hard. Hard is conveying that is to match your voice with the lyric and to put your own ego aside and say, yeah, just because I can doesn't mean I should. What I do is I extend people's range immediately. So there's almost all my singers sing as high as Mariah Carey. All my females do.
Wow.
And I do as well, and consistently. And so you connect from the bottom to the top of your range, that you're able to crescendo diminuendo with power, without interference from the outer muscles of the larynx, the swallowing muscles. If I put my fingers underneath my chin, I swallow. When I'm humming, if I go, which 99.9% of singers do, If these muscles interfere with free vocal cord vibration, I've got to disengage them so the vocal cords can wisely and intuitively, instinctively vibrate on their own. They don't need our help.
Yeah.
Little
Gotcha.
certain exercise I do will disconnect these outer muscles of the larynx so the inner muscles can vibrate freely, producing the maximum amount of sound without interference, because swallowing interferes with the vocal tone. And as a producer, you'll love this, because you'll hear a person kind of get this, they call it canurdle, the Kermit the Frog sound.
Yeah.
And you got to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And by the way, you speak extremely well as a high tenor. You speak in a nice place that has no clutter. And as a matter of fact, when I hear people like you speak, I think, oh, that's right, I got to raise my pitch. Because that's the most important thing, is people talk too low, they talk too forcefully, they talk too fake, and they sing too fake. They either sing too loud, too hard, too pushed. Their voices are never allowed to be what they were supposed to be.
Because they're singing in a way to meet someone's expectations rather than what just comes naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could not have said that better,
Cool.
I promise.
So I'm curious, you were just talking a lot about some physiology stuff there. How much background and training have you taken, like in anatomy and physiology and things like that?
I actually certify teachers all around the world, and that's part of their thing. We do this TEMPS, T-E-M-P-S, technical, emotional, mental, physiological, and the physiological is the most grueling part. I hate teaching it, but I also love it.
Okay.
I hate to because I don't want to.
Gotcha.
Because it's boring. I got to put on my nerd hat right now. And then S is spiritual, and that you got to be careful with, because everybody got their own brand of toothpaste, you know.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not trying to fix you or change you. I'm just trying to say that if you're going to sing with soul, you might want to presuppose you own one before you start. And if you don't think you own one, we'll just call that emotions, all right?
Yeah.
Is there a loving? Well, I don't believe in a soul. Well, and you'll probably sing like that too.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to offend anybody.
Yeah. You know, we've kind of brought up the Taylor Swift thing a few times. You know, when she first came on the scene, there were, I would say, a lot of parents with young daughters that thought, well, if this young lady can do it, then, you know, my little Susie can do that as well. You know, have you dealt with some of that where the parents think that their, you know, daughter or their son are just a couple of, you know, vocal lessons away from being the next big superstar kind of thing?
That's a fantastic question. I wasn't planning on you asking it, so that's even a better question.
Okay.
I would have not have thought of that. But let me tell you, back in the day, the Paramore fans, what did they call them? Para-whores? The girls like, I'm a para-whore because I'm just like Paramore, you know?
Yeah.
But I had girls coming in with the same red, they say, well, you taught Hayley.
Yeah.
So I want to be just like Hayley. So this girl who can sing with, and Hayley would say, yeah, and girls got a lot more range than I do. Girl from Alabama or Georgia driving up from, well, Alabama-Georgia border, driving up for lessons all the time. Dad's a cop, good friend of mine, because a lot of my friends are in law enforcement because jiu-jitsu. We're having long conversations. He goes, he's from Turkey, real sweet man. He goes, she just really just wants to be the next Hayley Williams. So she comes in dressed, and this is a great, wonderful story. One of the best stories I've ever been able to share with people.
Oh, cool.
And it's really praiseworthy of Hayley, who I'd taught her for 9 years. And Hayley was coming for a lesson. I said, hey, this girl's a huge fan of yours. And she is, and she was on her way to her lesson. I said, she's got amazing pipes. She's gone from classical singing to this high full, what people call belt, what I call mix. It's like crying, like I say, crying on pitch. If a person goes on my channel, they can hear all about what mixed voice is. But it's the illusion that you're yelling, but you're not, because again, you're crying. Crying is easier than yelling. And this girl's wailing up into these super high A's and B flats, above the male high C, full out. And I said, hey, if you like what you hear, poke your head in. And so she's there. I was expecting that micro. That was a macro expression, not a micro expression. But so she's in there, and then she pokes her head. She goes, oh, hey, sorry, am I interrupting anything? The girl goes, no. She goes, you sound amazing. She goes, oh my gosh, I love you. And Hayley walks over and hugs her. She goes, do you care if I watch some of your lessons? She goes, I don't. It was just such a great moment. I mean, I used to get choked up the first like 20 times I would tell this story, but it was just such a, I try to keep sessions and all that stuff really private. These people have my confidence. It's like doctor, patient, attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
But moments like that where it's praiseworthy of everybody.
That's cool.
I like to share that. So how many girls did I have that all wanted to be Hayley Williams?
Yeah.
Everyone, and they'd all do her pronunciation, how she puts her that kind of rock sound, you know. And I'd say like, hey, Hayley Williams called me when she wants her style back. You gotta stop that.
Right.
And I try to get as many influences. Being impersonated is a rich form of flattery and a subtle form of theft. And the Taylor Swift people, let me tell you, over 1,000 girls that I've taught literally wanted to be her.
Wow.
And I said, look, and another couple dozen guys wanted to be Josh Groban. I said, do you notice there is not even one other Josh Groban out there? Mm. It's this niche that he carved out where there can only be one, there can only be one.
You talked about some folks that have made some records, from years kind of gone by. Do you talk a lot about, or do you talk about what your work is as a vocal coach to folks that have been singing for a long time and they're, I don't really need a vocal coach because, I've had a successful, music career for 20 years. I sing the same songs every night. The crowd likes what they're hearing, so I'm not going to change anything. What
the number of those people who come to me, and of course this is where I got to be extremely protective and not name names, but the number of people who come to me who have won Grammys, who've won CMAs and GMAs and said, I can't sing anymore.
Right.
This guy comes to me, I can't sing anymore. And if it were Happy Birthday, he'd be going, Happy Birthday, dear. And some of the most brilliant voices, a voice that a country singer who they used to say he was too good for country. And he was like, I can't sing anymore. I said, well, when did you start smoking? He goes, oh, stress, man.
Yeah.
I said, how do you know? I said, dude, I can smell it on you, man.
Yeah.
Sorry. I said, I don't mean to bust your chops here. I mean, if you want to smoke, go right ahead. I'm not judging you for it. I'm just simply saying that if you had $1 million racehorse, would you let it smoke cigarettes? And he goes, no. How about a $5 junkyard dog? And he goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I said, so you quit? He goes, well, I said, come on, man. Who are you? Are you stronger than that? You stronger than a rag and a piece of paper? Weed and a piece of paper? And he goes, yeah, man. And I said, so you quit just now, right? I said, I'm not going to have this conversation with you in a week. And he comes back and he said, man, I went, like, I'm stronger than that. And I said, yeah, every time you want to smoke, don't.
Yeah.
and he quit. And he came back, and then his voice started coming back, but I had to rehab his voice completely. And I remember our third lesson into this phenomenal singer. He's going to an E flat above high C, and he was like, how am I doing that? Back in my old days, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And by the end, he had F's above high C full out. And he was like, I made him go from country to singing Bryan McKnight just to show him he could.
I think it's really cool because without busting your chops, you were getting super technical a little bit ago, which I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. But I'm also thinking the people that are listening to this are like totally zoned out.
Right, exactly.
But see, this is the thing that's important though. What you are describing is kind of what I feel makes a great vocal coach is that it's not someone that just says, okay, this is how you breathe. It's someone that's saying, I'm going to look at your entire holistic approach to this and go, okay, this is why you are failing and not succeeding. So you didn't need to tell this guy how to breathe. You needed to tell him straight up, you have to stop smoking because you're killing your anatomy.
Right.
And that's actually a pretty critical part of being a vocal coach.
And interestingly enough, though I had to retrain him how to sing what he did well before, he didn't know how to find the coordination anymore. It would be like a jump shooter losing his shot. And so you got to put your elbow back in. He goes, am I doing that? And like, because I'm intensely, I love sports, all sports. A black preacher calls me and he goes, man, I the host big, got to hold him in. I I said, no. That ain't the Holy Spirit. That's you, man.
Yeah.
God ain't saying, I need you to deliver a message. To deliver this message, you're going to need to tear holes in your vocal cords. And until you do that, I'm going to be up here wincing, going, please kill yourself. I will give you this spiritual high that will make you thrash your vocal cords. I said, that's you, man. And he was like, preach. That's what he said to me. He said, preach. I said, yeah. I said, what in us makes us think that the passion, unbridled passion, the uncontrolled passion. See, uncontrolled passion is like when people will say, well, it's like wild horses. I said, wild horses aren't free. You think wild horses are free? They live half as long as tame horses. They don't have anybody to feed them, to brush their coat, to keep them. They don't have any medical care. They don't have, they're being chased by predators. They have ticks, tons of them. A lot of them die very, very young. They're mangy. People say, no, that's not true. You see them, they're so beautiful running out. Those are commercials, wild horses. And you think, no, that's the myth of wild horses.
Right.
And an untrained horse is like an untrained dog. A wild dog. You think wild dogs are free? Well, no. Ain't no wild dog free. They want to be kept. They need to be trained. And the interesting thing is, the meek musician is not a weak musician. The saying, the meek will inherit the earth, people think, well, that means humble. No, it doesn't. Meek doesn't mean that. It's a horse training term. It means broken to harness.
Yeah.
So when a musician or a singer, they've harnessed their craft and they say, I know exactly who I am. And an example would be Mark Kibble from Take Six. I've trained him off and on for 20 years. Yeah. That guy is
insane.
And you talk about broken to harness. He sang on my newest program, my newest Singing Success 360 program.
Cool.
And he hears the first two chords of Oh Beautiful for Spacious Skies, and he stops and he goes, is that DeMarco Johnson playing? I said, yeah. And he goes, all right, like this. He doesn't need to hear the rest. He knows exactly where he's going. And he sings the R&B version, the gospel version. One takes, he does it. He goes, all right, what else you got? Not like, let's go listen down. You don't even, he'll tell you if there was a mistake. Yeah. Literally, he sang 5 songs, not one mistake.
Wow.
I mean, that's broken to harness. I have harnessed my gift. And he sounds free like a wild horse. When that guy runs, I mean, he works on his runs for hours at a time. Yeah. Breaks them down real and meticulously with his doing his chromatic scales and all of his major over minor, minor over major pentatonic scales and harmonic pentatonic scales and jazz riffs that he sings along with Wynton Marsalis, the Marsalis brothers. He sings their licks to get that phrasing, and now they come and watch him at the Blue Note to figure out what he's doing. And whenever I'm giving him a vocal session, I want to play some improv stuff after I've vocalized and warm up his voice, because I'm going to learn from him. And I tell him, I said, man, I'm just stealing from you now. I'll be honest.
And you got one of his bandmates on your staff?
Yeah,
is that
Claude
correct?
McKnight. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Bryan McKnight's brother, and I should say Bryan is Claude's brother. Claude's the elder, and I would say it definitely influenced his younger brother. I mean, and they sing together, they gig a lot, and Claude sings all the instruments. I'm not sure if you've heard him do the trombone stuff like that with the Wooten brothers. It was a fun little story. Claude was there, and he said, my coach is here, Brett, man. He said, first time I ever had a coach. He goes, stand up. And I'm like, oh, no, don't applaud me. And he said, yeah, he's really revolutionized my thinking. He's playing the vocal cords aren't like a rubber band that you stretch, but more like something you zip up. So thank you, Brett Manning, for helping me with my zipper, my vocal cords. And he was like, I didn't know. Hey, I'm sitting down. It was a fun, cute, little embarrassing moment for both of us. But good buddies of mine. He co-wrote Mastering Harmony with me. We've only done volume 1, so if people get it and think it's simple, as you know, 95% of harmony is really, really simple. That complex stuff is if you're in a jazz group.
Sure.
So we simplified it to the point where some people are like, oh, this is boring. I said, if you master this, master it and call me back. Yeah. But this is the stuff this is the foundation of one of the greatest harmony singers who's ever lived. Yeah. So those guys, they have broken themselves to harness. So when they hear them live, they're very free. because they're meek. They've humbled their voice and harnessed their voice, broken it, shaved off all the rough edges. They know they can depend on their voices. They warm up slowly their voices throughout the day. They know exactly the predictability. And how do 6 guys stay healthy on a world tour? 3 years ago, they circled the globe 3.5 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
And didn't miss a gig.
Yeah.
And I'll say didn't miss a note, all of them. So when people say I don't need technique, I said, okay, so you're the one. Pavarotti says, every now and then a singer becomes so in tune with his voice, has so much coaching, so much instruction, so much knowledge and experience that he doesn't need anyone to tell him that his voice needs coaching anymore. He is autonomous and he doesn't need to listen to anybody because he has become that good of a singer. I just have never met that singer. Which he always did that. He flipped the script. He'd get you agreeing with him. You're like, no. Flattery is given. It's not paid. It's given. You did nothing to earn it. It only benefits the person giving it. But compliments are earned. That's why you give flattery and you pay compliments. If you give a compliment to somebody, it's sincere. It's like, dude, I owe you. I have to pay you because you're good. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's just not good, you sit there and you scratch your neck and like, yeah, man, have you got any training? Mm-hmm. Buddy of mine was in a session, the drummer was really, really good, and he goes, hey, man, you ever practice with the metronome? And he goes, not really. He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
My friend was like, oh, crap. And my friend went home and got his metronome out, and now he's playing around town for high-level people because somebody didn't flatter him, told him the truth. I mean, telling a person the truth doesn't have to be harsh. The truth is, when the truth is real and is critical, the truth is harsh enough. Mm. Telling it harshly just pushes people down by themselves. Yeah,
for me, that's kind of been one of my business paradigms is telling the truth in love.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that has allowed me an opportunity to work with a lot of people because I will be very upfront with them, but I'm not going to insult them in the process.
Right. Thank you.
So it's cool to hear that that's kind of sort of your line of thinking as well.
Yeah, like when a person comes into me just to work with me, and if they're arrogant, I'll oppose them. And there's a Bible verse that says, God opposes the proud, gives grace to the humble. Well, that's a pretty good paradigm.
This is a little bit of a Nashville-centric look, obviously, Music City, Memoirs. And so the last question that I always ask folks, if I remember, and I'm remembering this time, is just kind of looking at where we're at as a city and how we're connected, from a music community, and what would be your hope for Nashville and the music community moving forward, having been a part of it for so long and kind of casting a vision. What would that be for you?
I think my biggest hope is that we don't lose Nashville in the process. In your attempt to be Nashville, don't become a caricature of yourself. The real Nashville is cool old vintage instruments, yet at the same time, if we need to auto-tune somebody and make it cool and make a dance mix, we can do that. That we have the best of LA and New York, and they want the best of us. And I think the best of us, we're the acoustic music center of the world. We're the songwriting center of the world. I want to see that stick. And I want to see us go deeper as a community. If you master being believable, you'll always have an audience.
Well, Brett, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your singing success movement just continue to flourish. Thanks for taking time out of the day.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Dave.